Right, I think I have waited a fair while. Oh, what's going on there? Right, everyone. Hi there. My name's Tracy. Can you hear me okay? Just let me know in the chat panel. If you want to put your cameras on, feel free, but you really don't have to at all. So let me just explain. My name's Tracy Pettinger. I'm going to be the tutor that does, I can just see looking at the nerves on the chat panel that some of you have got the exam this week anyway. So brilliant. That's good luck to you guys. So let me just explain. Is there anybody here this evening who is brand new this evening? Because I know a lot of you will have been with Cass for the 6 weeks. Is there anybody that's right? Okay, so to save having to spend so much time explaining, just to explain how it's going to work. So guys, I'm sorry I'm not Cass. I don't know if Cass told you last week that it was her last evening. So I'm doing the next 6 sessions, and what we're going to be doing, oh sorry, I've got quite a few people waiting to come in the waiting room. It's a big class, isn't it? There's a lot of you on here. It's very exciting. Right, so basically, what Cass has been doing, she's been working through a Maboo budgeting, whatever you want to call it, mock exam. So I work for First Intuition. I've worked there for quite a while, and I have been teaching AAT and Maboo for about 16 years. So I'm taking over. What I'm going to do this evening, I'm going to send out, I'm going to go through the very last task, because I believe that you've just got one last task to complete. And oh, there's so many people joining. It's great. So I'm going to go through the very last task, task 8, I believe it is. And sorry, I've got a big massive thing that says press record, because I always forget to press record. So I'm going to go through that with you this evening. I feel awful because I don't feel like you're going to get to know me, because I like to have a bit of fun, but it's difficult to have fun, isn't it, when you're doing a wordy question? But I'll try and give you my honest thoughts and help with it. And then anybody who anybody who has already done the course, the rest of it, or anybody who's brand new this evening, I'm trying to spit my words out. I've literally just finished teaching a day class about 15 minutes ago, so my head's all over the place. Yeah, so anybody who is new this evening, it's okay, Leslie. So what's going to happen, Leslie, after this course, I'll get an email telling me that the Zoom recording is ready. So I'll send you the recording from this evening, so you'll have that on record. I'm also going to send you Cass's past 6 sessions. So you've actually, just in case any of you are new today and you're doing your exam in the next week, couple of weeks, you've then got all the recordings that you can watch. However, if you're not doing your exam sort of in the next couple of weeks, stick with me and come and see me on a Tuesday night. I mean, what else have you got to do at this time on a Tuesday night? We might as well do a revision session for Maboo. So what I'm going to do after I've finished task 8, next week I'm just going to start back at task 1. So if you haven't already seen it, and you're not doing your exam sort of imminently, join in and do it live. That way you can ask me questions and things as we go through. Does that make sense for anybody that's new? So all we do, it's like a 6-week rota, but unfortunately Cass didn't get the full mock finished in 6 weeks. So I'm just finishing off the last task. But I'll probably try and get, oh, there could be a lot actually, Pat. Pat, that's a good question that Pat's just asked. How much of this unit will be in the synoptic? Well, with the level 4 synoptic unit, it's based on, well, it can be based on anything that you've done in your studies. However, the level 4 PDSY synoptic predominantly concentrates on Maboo and MDCL. So even though financial statements is a biggie, if you look at the number of tasks in the exam, I think there's only one task, maybe 2 that asks you about financial statements. So it's really, it's a good idea. It won't do you any harm, although tonight we're only doing a wordy question. But if you want to come next week to me, feel free, because I'll watch the recordings when I send you them after the class, because you'll be able to see the rest of the mock exam. And yeah, you could, whenever you look through the synoptic assessment, the main thing that they always say is that you're going to be tested basically from anything at level 4 and even level 3. However, I know for an absolute fact, because I teach the synoptic, that majority of it is based on the syllabus from MDCL and MABU. So yeah, it's a hard one, is the synoptic assessment. It really is, because, you know, it's very wordy, lots of wording in it. Anyway, so is everybody clear on what's going to happen tonight and how it's all going to work? I'm going to go through this last task after the class. It might even be tomorrow morning, because it depends when I get the email from, you get an email from Zoom when you've recorded it, just to let you know that it's ready. I'll send you that out along with all the recordings from previous sessions and some sessions from last year from my other colleague David, who also did some sessions last year. And then starting next week, I'll start again on this mock exam, and I'll also send you a copy of the mock exam. And that will have, I will start from task 1 again next week. So all the number stuff we'll cover again from next week. Any questions, guys, before we start? Yeah, I'm going to do the exact same mock, Asha. Yeah, because the thing is, a lot of people that have watched the last sort of 6 weeks will be getting ready to do exams, whereas we'll have new people joining every week who've not already seen it. So we'll just be going through the same mock. Okay, right, if there's no questions, you just give me 2 minutes to sort my computer out, turn my screen round and start sharing everything with you. Let me turn my video off. So for those that are new, you know, this is not a class, this is a revision session. It's not tuition, that's a really important part. We kind of expect that you've come on here to sort of get some revision help. So we don't really, in 1 hour a week, have time really to teach the full course. We try our best to do what we can. We do the best that we can in the hour that we've got. Right, you should be able to see on my screen now the mock assessment. It says mock assessment 4. Can you all see that? Brill. So it is interactive, is this session. I want you to ask questions, but you don't have to. If you were in one of my classes during the day and you were a first intuition student, I'd be kind of saying, come on, answer me lots of questions. No, I think I know they don't, as far as I know, they don't get deleted. No, they're saved to my cloud, so should be fine, Leslie. I don't think there's a time limit on them, as far as I'm aware. But that being said, please make sure you do your exam in 2021. I know that sounds a bit of a ridiculous statement, but 2022, the AAT is changing everything, and we're moving on to AQ 22 syllabus. So what's in this exam now will not be in this exam next year. It'll be completely different. So you need to make sure you get it done this year. Right. Which, considering it's February, I'm sure that's not going to be too much of a challenge. Right, okie dokie, let me whiz through this wonderful mock exam. Honestly, guys, my head's all over the place. I've only just finished teaching indirect tax. So if I start talking about VAT, don't get too confused, will you? I've done that before. Right, let me just grab what I need. Have I got everything? I think so. Right, let's have a look at it. Time goes so quick on these evenings. I always worry. Okay, so feel free to ask questions. Let me just look what you did last week. All right, so last week was an operating statement, wasn't it? Okay. Right, and then, okay, task 8. So, unfortunately for you wonderful people, you have got to do a exam that has got at least 2 wordy questions in it. Okay, I've heard it all before, guys. I know how much everybody hates the wordy questions. They are the worst ones of all. Don't forget, I've been teaching this for a long time. So obviously I know these wordy questions sort of back to front. No, what I'm going to do, Leslie, I'm going to send you, when I send that email tonight or tomorrow morning, I'm going to send you a copy of the mock exam, so you'll have a copy of it. You won't have it with you, will you, now, because you've just joined, but I'll make sure you get it tomorrow morning first thing. What, you've grown to like these revision sessions? I like teaching them, actually. I taught them every week last year. I did, what did I do? Business tax and oh, the written questions, really. Sorry, I was just going to tell you what I did last year revision wise, and it was a totally different thing. Yeah, well, that's good. I'm teaching ACCA at the moment, and they absolutely hate the worded questions that have come up in ACCA, but they are obviously quite difficult. So the key thing to understand about a wordy question is you're probably going to have some calculations to do. However, majority of the answer is in the question. They don't really want you to answer a question that is based on nothing, that made up. Okay, what I always do with these wordy questions, I always go to the answers to start with. Not the answers, sorry, the questions. Because if we look at the question and then we go back and read the scenario, we kind of know what we're looking for. Okay, so what we've been given is 3 questions, all words. They want you to write an email to the managing director in 3 parts, in which you are going to explain part A, the main reason for the sales revenue, the material, the labour and the variable overhead cost variances from the flexed budget. Okay, so as we're going through, I want you to be thinking, oh, why might there be a variance from the sales revenue? Why might there be a problem with material? Why might we have got a variance with labour and variable overheads, obviously? Okay, and another key thing, it mentions the word flexed budget. Can anybody tell me what that means? Absolutely fantastic, Asha. It is. It is being able to compare like for like. And the thing that is good, yeah, kind of, Rebecca, but the most important thing is that you realise that all of these figures that you are given, none of them are done down to the fact that, let's just make some figures up. Let's say we've got an original budget of 1,000 units, and then we've got actual of 1,300 units. Okay, so if they've told us in the question that we have already flexed the budget, what you always do, you always flex the budget to the actual number of units. So I would have a third column that I'd shove in the middle, and it would be for 1,300 units. And somebody used my perfect wording, Asha used it, so we can compare like for like. Because when I next look, or when we go and look at the question and there's a variance column and there'll be some monetary values and some variances down here, we know that not one of those variances is anything to do with the fact that the budget was only 1,000 units and we actually made more, because actually the numbers that we are comparing are the ones that were 1,300 units compared to 1,300 units. The only difference is whatever our budgeted or standard cost per unit was. Let's say we were talking about material and we'd said material was £2 per unit. Okay, we still use that £2 per unit in the flexed budget, but what we're actually doing is timesing it by the actual number of units. So when we're comparing like for like, none of these variances are because we only said we'd produce 1,000 units, because that is no longer in use. Once you've flexed the budget, you're comparing the number of units to the number of units. So the only thing that could have gone wrong is we actually paid more, or we actually made more. So we spent more or made more than we expected, as in money, not in units. Does that make sense, everyone? Is everyone okay with that? So don't go looking for reasons based on what the budgeted figure originally might. So Jade, if you think about it, we originally budgeted to make 1,000 units. Okay, so let's say we made 1,000 units, and for material, let's say material, we said for every unit we were going to spend £2 on material. So what we would do, we would take that £2 in our original budget column and we'd times it by 1,000 units. So that would give us £2,000. Right. When we flex the budget, we still use the £2, but we times it by the 1,300 units. 2,600. And then let's say actually we ended up spending £3,000. So we've got a variance of £400, and that would be adverse. But Jade, that adverse variance is nothing at all to do with the fact that we made less units, because we didn't make less units. We've just done a flexed budget, which is comparing what we thought we'd spend, which was £2 per unit, times 1,300, compared to actually making 1,300 and spending £3,000. So it's pretty obvious that the reason why we've got this variance is down to the fact exactly that we paid a higher price. Could have been for a better quality. I suppose it depends what the scenario says. It could have just been that the suppliers put the prices up. But no matter what, it's got to be down to do with the fact that we paid more than £2. So pure and simply, when you get, this is the thing that the examiner always loses his head over. It's when students will say, well, we spent more money because we made more units. If we flexed a budget, we haven't made more units because we've flexed it to the actual number of units. Everyone okay with that? Guys, if you've only just joined us, hi, my name is Tracy. I don't know if you were with us last week or with Cass last week. I am literally going to be going through the last task of a mock exam, and then next week I'll be starting from task 1 again. So I'll send you an email after class confirming everything, and hopefully it'll all make sense. Right, so what we're just doing is we're just in task 8 looking at the question. So that is a biggie, the simple fact that the budget has been flexed. Well, I don't know, Asher, I'll tell you about that because I'm going to be marking some scripts tomorrow and I'm not looking forward to it. So I'm thinking maybe at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, wine might be a good idea. So, right, so that's part A. So when we get into looking at the question, let's make sure we're thinking about the fact that it's nothing to do with a different number of units. We need to look at the question and see if there's anything in that question that will advise us why the sales revenue, material, labour and variable overheads have all got variances. Okay, right. Part B, I think this is a little bit harder, but hopefully I'll simplify it when I'm doing the question. How failings in the budgetary control system resulted in losses? So that's kind of giving it away that we're going to have losses in this question. A budgetary control system is just about having some sort of a control over what you're meant to spend. So you've got a budget. Did we stick to that budget? If we didn't, why not? Were there any controls in place to make sure that we should have? So what you're going to see very soon is that somebody made an absolute massive mess and caused a huge problem. Okay. And then last point, why is it important to keep standard costs updated? Suggest an example of a change that would and a change that would not need to be updated. So they are not like just off the top of your head, what might I change and what might I not change. It's based on the information we're given in the question. Some stuff has to be changed and updated, some doesn't. Okay, so they're the 3 questions. Guys, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, right, that's the questions. Doesn't seem too bad, does it? Right, what we've been given down here is our operating statement. Now, what they have already told us in the question, and it's also telling us there, is that we've flexed the budget. So we don't know how many units the original budget was for. We can find that out actually, and we'll look at that later. But we do know that we have flexed it to the actual number of units. So all of these figures in the flex budget are all based on what the standard cost was for 1 unit times the actual number of units. So as you can see, there's nothing there that is telling us that those figures, look at all those variances. Oh my word, they're all adverse. That's a bad sign. Okay, so we know that none of them are down to the fact that, well, we budgeted to make this many, but we actually made that. We flexed the budget, which means those figures are all based on 19,000 units. Is everybody okay with that? Good. Lovely. Right, let's see what we've got. Right, we've got this operating review. So review the operating statement and the additional information shown below and prepare the email report that we've already just gone through. Right, think about those questions that we just went through. Additional information. Right, the procurement manager, I struggle with that word, procurement manager, left the company at the beginning of the year. Okay. So the business tried to save costs. So to save costs, a junior office worker. Now, I don't know if you know what I can't say it. I'm struggling tonight. A procurement manager. They are the person that decides how much we're going to spend on something. Okay. Quite an important job, almost like a purchasing manager. Yeah. A little bit higher up than a purchasing manager. It's like a procurement manager would decide, would probably have the final say on whether we're going to buy a new machine, etc., etc. So this was, and I'm not getting at this person, it's great, you know, to save costs, they just took a junior office worker, which is trying to degrade that job by, it's not, it's trying to sort of say that they wouldn't be very experienced. And that office worker took over the procurement role. Instead of recruiting a new procurement manager, they probably saved about 30 grand, which is quite a lot of money. Okay, because a procurement manager, they get paid quite a lot of money. Keen to prove himself in his new role, he decided to make a few changes. Of course he did. Okay, including changing to a new supplier that was 20% cheaper. Right, that doesn't sound too bad. 20% less on material costs. However, unfortunately, the new material supplied was inferior quality. In other words, we bought, you know, we bought Asda's own instead of Asda's top of the range. Okay, although I prefer Asda's own tomato sauce, but that's another story. Okay, and this resulted in us using 50% more material per unit than had originally been budgeted. He really has messed up. You're right, Megan. So that's major. We've doubled up on the amount of material that we would have originally budgeted for. So we're expecting some good old variances, aren't we? Right. The poorer grade material was harder to work with than the usual material, and consequently, the average time to take the unit was twice as long as expected. So if we just look for a second, I'm just sneaky beakying down here. In the material, we originally said we'd use 0.2 kilograms per unit. Well, that's doubled to 0.4 kilograms, and labour is meant to take half an hour per unit, but that's actually saying that we actually doubled up. It actually took twice as long. So actually it took an hour to make one unit as opposed to half an hour. So straight away they'll have made less units, although that's irrelevant for our calculations because we've already flexed the budget. Okay. Are we happy with that so far? Also, this meant that the machines were also running for double the time. So if we just think for a minute, double material, double labour, double machine time. It's not looking good. What else has happened? The problem was compounded as the budget did not include an allowance for overtime, and so the volume produced was half that of the original budget. Okay, this led to a backlog of orders from customers. Now, the original budget didn't have overtime in it because when they did their budget, there was enough hours. The staff had enough time in the hours that they were due to work. So they didn't put, I don't know, if they're paid £15 an hour, they didn't put a double time rate in for a few hours or a time and a half rate in because they didn't expect this issue to happen. So obviously some of our labour will have been spent on overtime trying to, yeah, there's absolutely no slack, Tony, no slack whatsoever being built in. Okay. So a backlog of orders for customers. Now, we know what that means. You've got angry customers. You've got a potential loss of customers who tell you really, well, I'm not willing to wait. I'm desperate. I'm going to go down the road to your competitor. I might have to pay a little bit more, however. So what happens is the sales manager, as a goodwill gesture, offers the customers a 20% discount on price. 20% is absolutely huge. You could have expected, well, he is very kind. He's also probably going to lose his job, but that's another story. But he offered this 20% discount on price to compensate for the longer wait time, as this was to maintain customer loyalty. The manager did not seek authority. Yeah, good work, Megan. Yeah, so we'd got the material for 20% cheaper, but that was just useless anyway because it's been rubbish material. But we've given them a discount of 20%. So yeah, crazy. So this is the big thing. The manager did not seek authority from the MD to offer this discount, which is the usual process. I mean, yeah, give them a 2% discount and then maybe go with your sort of tail between your legs to the managing director and say, oh, I've offered him a 2%. However, to give them 20% and not get permission, huge. So think about it. We've sold less units than what we expected to sell. Okay, because we didn't expect to sell 19,000. I can't remember whereabouts it said, but I think we've only made half the amount that we expected, or whatever it said. I can't quite remember. So we're going to get a hugely insignificant amount of revenue less than we expected. Also, we've then given them a 20% discount. Now, I understand that the sales manager is having a massive panic because, you know, he's trying to do the right thing by the customers, but he should never have done that. Okay. Due to an error, now this is a sort of different thing altogether. And this has also compounded the fact that there's overtime being worked that wasn't originally budgeted for. We've had to work loads more hours than what we originally expected. Also, we forgot to include the 2% pay increase that had been awarded to staff. So on top of everything else, we're 2% down in our budget that we should have added on because we've given our staff a 2% increase. So it is not, you know, to see loads and loads of variance is not a huge shock, is it? Let's be honest. The original budget was prepared by the senior management team and approved by the managing director. She is extremely concerned that the business is now making a loss. Well, that's because her budget was all lovely. When the budget was originally done, everything was fine. You didn't have a 16-year-old office junior who then decided to go buy some absolute rubbish material, or a sales manager who decided to give 20% discount. You know, there was some issues that were their fault. The 2%, so, you know, you've got your controllable or uncontrollable variances that need to come into this. And the 2% increase was definitely an issue that should have been dealt with at the planning stage. So that's definitely not down to the sales manager or the procurement manager. That's just something that was missed off the budget, because it's obviously been agreed. It's just somebody's forgot to put it in the budget. Right. So what have we got? We've got sales revenue. We only sold 19,000 units. We've got how much everything was. We've got the key things that we need to look at, because if you remember what it said in the question, is that, yeah, I would say HR have got something to talk about, but, you know, I suppose they thought that this, I don't know. I mean, in real life, this wouldn't happen. You wouldn't give an office junior a procurement manager's job, even if they were absolutely amazing. So you've got the sales revenue of 95,000. You've got a £7,600 material variance. The huge variance is the labour, because obviously we had to do lots of overtime. It didn't include the 2% increase, and they ended up working double the amount of time. You've got variable overheads, and that's really all I need to think about. So has anybody got any thoughts? No thoughts? Right. I think probably the best thing I can do is I'm just going to write this out, but I'm going to talk through it as I'm writing it. It's quite a big wordy question. Now, less is more with AAT. You need to say, I've probably wrote War and Peace. I actually know that answer, Becky, somewhere. Do I know that answer? Hang on, Becky, I'm looking. Right, give me a second, because I've got that in my material somewhere. I'm just whizzing into some notes, and I can tell you how many marks Cascade is worth. Cascade is worth 20 marks. In fact, no, let me just double check on that. I don't trust that. Let me just look at something else. Oh no, I was right. It's actually worth 20 marks. In fact, every single task in the Maboo course, let me just show you this. Let me get rid of all my drawing. Oh, I can't because I've saved it as a PDF. Ignore my silly writing, guys. But you've got 8 tasks, 20 marks per task. And you've got 2.5 hours, 70% competent. So yeah, they're all of equal sort of standing, really. They're all exactly the same. It's very unusual that for an AAT. So they're all of the same size, if that makes sense. Is that all right, Becky? Yep, let me go back. Right, so what I'm going to do, please excuse my writing. I'm going to I'm going to write this, but I'm not going to write it on the email that's provided because I've got about 75 pages. Again, less is more. I'm trying to give you a really thorough answer. You'd never answer it quite like this. It's too much, but you need to try and get as many of the points in as possible. But if you joined a little bit late, I gave a bit of sort of exam technique. And what I did, I went straight to the questions first before we started. Because then if you've read the question, when you then go back and start looking at the scenario that it gives you, you've got those questions in mind. So you should already be thinking why you've got a variance in material, why you've got a labour variance, why you've got a sales revenue variance. It tells us all that stuff. And another thing that I said, just in case you did sort of log in a little bit late, is there is nothing that they're expecting you to really come up with that it doesn't kind of give you in the question. You know, it's not one of those where it says, make something up. What do you think could have caused it? It's told you what's caused everything. You've just got to be able to look in the question and find the answer. So I'm going to write an email. So we need to make this professional. So first thing I would do, I would start with a bit of an opening. Please see below. Please excuse my writing, by the way. Please, this is going to be boring for you, but nobody particularly likes wordy questions. Please see below the main reasons for the variances. An explanation on the findings or the failings even of the budgetary control system and the importance of keeping standards updated. Right, so what I've done there in my opening comment, opening paragraph, is I've answered it. Well, I've said, see below for the answers to A, B, and C. And if we remind ourselves what A, B, and C was, A, B, C is all about the variances. Part 2 is the failings of the budgetary control system. And part 3 is the importance of keeping standards updated. So I've just done a bit of an opening. Please see below, this is what you're going to get. What I would then do is I would probably start with part A. And I would make sure I'd told the examiner that this bit that I'm answering now, even though I've done that paragraph at the top, this particular bit is answering part A. Okay, are we all right so far, guys? Okay, so there are many significant variances within the business. Mostly due to, will you tell me, what's the main cause of pretty much all of those variances? What's caused it all? Yeah, so material, cheaper supplier, but Rebecca Halliday's put staff error. And I think what you mean by there, Tony, sorry, I think you mean what Ash has said, which is that procurement manager that we have allowed to, well, be employed and go do what they've done. Okay, so there are many significant variants within the business, mostly due to a significant, no, I've already used, have you? No, I don't want to use significant twice. Yeah, the pay rise, that's quite a big thing as well, because that 2% was completely forgotten, which isn't the poor procurement manager's fault, actually, which is mainly due to a single business error, which has led to further problems throughout the business. I'm really sorry, guys. I really love doing like loads of number stuff and I can get you all involved, but this is me just trying to give you my advice on how I would answer this task. Right, so I go back to the question and I'm now going to start talking about these variances. So I'm going to talk about the sales revenue, material, labour and variable overheads. Okay, because that's exactly what it wants to do. But I don't just kind of shove it all in one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each one separate because that's what it wants to know. So we've got the sales revenue. And what I would always tend to do is, even though I'm going to talk about the variance in the exam, actually in my workings, I would always just kind of at the beginning say what the variance is. So sales revenue, 95,000 adverse. Right, can you tell me why you think we've got an adverse sales revenue variance? What's caused it? Yeah, 20% discount, the sales manager. Yeah, also, yeah, leave it at that. Yeah, the 20% discount. So what I always tell students, and one of the things that the examiner has said when you're talking about variances, he wants, no, Mariana, that's a really important part. We did sell less than expected, but have we flexed the budget? So this variance that we have got is looking at how many units we actually sold, and we've flexed it to the actual number of units. So it's got to be to do with the sales price. So there's a drop in sales price from, you've worked it out, Asher, from 25 to 20. Mariana, does that make sense? Yeah, that's exactly what's caused it. It's a lower selling price per unit. Yeah, perfect. Never ever, sorry to go on like an old woman, moaning and whinging, but never ever say it's because you sold less or you sold more, because straight away the examiner just goes like that. They don't understand a flex budget. So a flex budget is nothing to do with the number of units, because we've already flexed it. So sales revenue is 95 grand. What the examiner wants you to do is explain, what does that mean? Okay, and I know you know what an adverse variance means, but the examiner wants you to tell him what or her, whatever it is, what an adverse variance means. So this means we have received less revenue than expected. So, right, so then I'm going to tell him, even though it's told me, I'm going to tell him everything I think he needs to know. The flexed budget has been flexed to the actual number of units. Therefore, already reflects the fall in sales volume that we've talked about. To keep companies happy, to keep customers happy. I'm just looking at time and worrying about time. Do you know what I might do? Because I'm guessing you're going to probably be able to watch this video. How about if I, instead of writing it up, I talk it? So Wasana, it's the sales revenue figure that is less because we've flexed the budget to 19,000 units. So the volume is looking at what we expected our sales price to be at the number of units and what we actually sold. We did sell less. However, so the 19,000 units is what we actually sold, and that's what we've done. We've actually flexed it to the actual number of units. Guys, would it be all right with you? Are you going to watch this video later? Because I might just talk through this. Because it's already 18 minutes past 6 and I want to get through this. Yeah, so if I speak about it, instead of writing it up, it'll be quicker. Right, let me do that. Because then at least you can, yeah, I'm going to do that, Valerie. Is that because my writing's so bad, Valerie? Be honest. Right, okay. So let me see where I've got to. Right, so let me just get to where, right, the flex budget has been flexed to the actual number of units. Therefore, it already reflects the fall in the sales volume, which was caused by the quality problems because we were able to make less units because the material was so rubbish. To keep customers happy due to delays, the sales manager, yeah, I will do, Enrica, yeah, I will. So the sales manager has given a large 20% discount to all customers, which has led to a significant fall in revenue. Okay, because as you guys have worked out, the original selling price was whatever it was it £25? And have you just worked out that it was 20 quid? Is that what you said, Usha? I think that's what you said. Yeah. Okay. That's a lot of money per unit when there's 19,000 units. Yeah, drop from 25 quid to 20 quid at 19,000 units is a lot of money. Well, I'm expecting, I'm hoping she's done right, Ginny. It should be 380,000 divided by 19,000 units gives you 20 quid. Is that all right, Ginny? No worries. Right. Okay, where are we now? Right, so what I would do then, so that's basically answered the sales revenue one. I'd then do another line, and as I've done with there, sales revenue 95,000 adverse. And my next variance that I'd want to discuss is my material costs, which are 7,600 adverse, which isn't a massive big variance, but that's because on top of the fact that we've used more, we also paid less than we expected. He paid 20% less, didn't he? Because he went and got inferior material. So the decision to charge the suppliers, to change the suppliers by the procurement manager. Yeah, it will have also had an effect on material as well, though. Yeah, it's definitely caused more problems to to labour, more than anything. And the fact that we've been able to sell less products than we'd originally hoped for. So basically, the decision to change the supplier by the procurement manager has caused the business significant problems. The initial reduction in the price would give a favourable price variance. So think about it. Initially, from a price point of view, we're now paying 20% less than we expected. So that's brilliant. So I'm just going to make a couple of notes. So your material price would have been favourable because you've spent less than you originally thought, 20% less. However, the cheap material was lower grade and poor quality, which led to 50% more material, which would have resulted in an adverse material usage variance. So although part of the total variance, the material was favourable, we would have had a huge material usage variance. And that would have outweighed the favourable variance, if that makes sense. Is everyone okay with that? So we would have saved money on what we spent on buying it, but we've spent a lot more because we've used double what we expected. Okay. Overall, this caused a material cost variance of 7,600 adverse. Okay. I would then do another line and I would have talked about labour. So I would have wrote labour cost £148,200 adverse. That is wow. An adverse labour variance means that we have spent more on labour than expected. The poor quality material has led to additional labour as production time has doubled. This would have caused an adverse labour efficiency variance, because the efficiency variance is all about looking at the actual hours it took compared to the standard hours that you thought it would take to make that many units. In addition to this, exactly, yeah, overtime would have had to be paid. They'd have had to work extra hours. It could have been time and a half. It could have been double time. Exactly. So in addition to this, at the planning stage, so the planning stage is when the budget is originally being put together. So at the planning stage, a pay increase of 2% had not been included, or an allowance for any overtime. Now, that's not a negative. That's not me getting at anybody. There wasn't any overtime put in the budget because we didn't need any overtime when we did the budget. Everything was going to be perfect. Overall, this has led to a large adverse variance, adverse labour cost variance of 148,200. Right, if we can just have a look at variable overhead. So we've talked about that, sales revenue, we've talked about material, we've talked about labour. The only other one we need to talk about is variable overheads. Look how variable overheads are calculated. They are done based on hours. Now, yeah, it's a different rate for the variable overhead, £5 an hour, but it's still based on hours. And we know that we've done double what we expected. So therefore, it's even had a massive effect on variable overheads as well, because the main thing that's happened is it's took twice as long to do the work. So variable overheads are 47,500. Yeah, exactly. And your machines have worked twice as long. Variable overheads are calculated based on labour hours. Variable overheads had an adverse variance of 47,500, which means we spent more than expected. As the time taken to make the unit increased, this has caused an adverse variable overhead variance of 47,500. And that's it. That is a full explanation. I've made nothing up. Everything I've said about those variances, I have got from that information that is given me in the question. Are we reasonably happy with that, guys? Would you, I mean, you might not have gone into as much detail, but could you have said why we'd overspent on labour? Could you have said why we hadn't received as much revenue? Why we've overspent on material? Why we've overspent on variable overheads? Would you have been confident to talk about that? That's brilliant. Brilliant. And Jade, I think I heard you say you got your exam this week, and Ashley, you've got yours on Thursday. So that's good that you're feeling confident. Good. Right. What did it then want us to do? Part B, how failings in the budgetary control system resulted in losses. Right. Okay. So I would have probably started again. Obviously, I'm not writing it out because we're going to run out of time, but I would have done part B. I might have even said, I might have even wrote a sentence, failings in budgetary control. And what I would have then done, I would have gone through various costs and talked about the failings that we've found. So with regards to number one, material costs, it would be expected that the procurement manager would be responsible for finding an alternative supplier for the material, but the procurement manager was inexperienced and should have had this change authorised by a senior manager. This inexperienced decision has caused huge problems throughout the business. Do we agree with that? Yeah, it has. By him making his own mind, try and make himself probably look good that he was doing the right thing by paying less for material, it's caused huge problems. Controls in a budget are there to protect from risk, and this has not been the case here. Budget control does not mean that we can't, it does not mean that we can't deviate from the original plan as circumstances change, but had this decision been assessed by a senior manager, these issues may not have happened. Is that fair to say? Yeah, so there was no control in place. I would imagine there is a control in place that maybe a senior procurement manager wouldn't have had to get permission, but you would have expected. Well, I'm think about what you're going to be doing when you get to your synoptic assessment. A lot of it is to do with controls. There was obviously not a control in place to stop a junior office worker from making a huge mistake. So really, a bit of it's out of his control. Somebody should have taken control of him. Right. Then carrying on with this part B that's all about the budgetary issues or the failings. First of all, for labour cost, the omission of the 2% was a controllable cost. It was a controllable issue, a controllable variance, and was due to an issue at the planning stage and not a lack of budgetary control. No, exactly, Megan. Yeah. And what it's going to do, you know, what it's going to do is initially, if it had worked well, it's going to make him look good. And that's probably what he was thinking. He probably didn't think for 1 minute about what the material would be like. Yes, so labour costs, the omission of the 2% was a controllable variance and was due to an issue that would have taken place at the planning stage. It was nothing to do with a lack of budgetary control. It was a planning problem. Somebody forgot to put the 2% pay rise in the budget. That's a planning issue. It's nothing to do with operational. Okay. The original budget did not include overtime. Budgetary controls was in place as at the time, no overtime was needed. So there was no failings with regards to the overtime not being put in the budget. Although I'm probably speaking completely out of turn and different to this question, but I would have thought it was always worth putting a few quid in a budget for overtime just in case. But anyway, they've looked at the number of units that they were going to make and they didn't need any overtime. That's why it's not in the budget. Based on the current situation and moving forward, the managing director and the senior management team will need to decide if they should deviate from the plan and would this be beneficial to for the business overall to include overtime moving forward. So what they're kind of saying, yeah, that's a good point actually, top-down budgeting. What they're saying is that we've got a budget. In the original budget, there was no overtime. This problem has happened, which means we wish we had have put overtime in there, but they didn't do anything wrong. The planning team didn't make a bad decision because they didn't need overtime. What they may need to consider moving forward, not that they expect these horrendous issues to keep happening, but would it be a good idea to maybe put a little bit of overtime in the budget? You know, a budget is all about trying to make costs as low as possible. So maybe they think that they wouldn't benefit from putting anything in the budget for that, based on the fact that they didn't really need it. Right, still talking about the failings of the budgetary control system, selling price. The sales manager gave a 20% discount without authorization as a goodwill gesture. This contributed to the fall in profit. All discounts should be approved by senior management, regardless of the reason for the discount. Simple as that. I'm sorry, but there should be a control in place that says that the sales manager can't just knock off whatever he wants. How do we know if there's not a bit of backhandedness going on? Like, tell you what, mate, come to me, I'll buy from you, you give me a little bit of a backhander. You know, there should be some sort of, for them to reduce a price, even if it's a sales manager, it should be authorised. Because really, you have just given them £5 discount on every single unit that you sell. We've gone from 25 quid down to 20. Okay, slippery heels, love it. Right, part C, you'll be pleased to know we're nearly there. Part C says, why is it important to keep standard costs updated? Thinking about our question that we've just gone through, suggest an example of a change that, suggest an example of a change that would and a change that would not need to be updated. So we've got to think about what we've done. What we're saying is, well, straight away, do you think we need to change the standard cost of labour? Forget the procurement manager. Why? Why are we going to change the standard cost of labour? What's happened that we forgot about? Absolutely, Becky. We've got a 2% increase that somebody forgot to put in the budget. Yeah, Manpreet, that's right. Absolutely. Okay. So I definitely think that we need to amend the original. We need to amend the original standards. Right. What about? And I'm going to read you this, but I'm just going to talk about it for a second. If we're looking at standards that we think do need to change and standards that we don't need to change, do you think we should change the standard material needed to, what was it, 0.5 kilograms? Sorry, 0.2 kilograms to 0.4 kilograms. Should we change the cost? Should we change the amount that we're going to need? Or should we sack the office junior or maybe put him back in as an office junior? And should we go back to the old supplier? Tony, you've just hit the nail on the head. So absolutely, we're not going to change the number of units. We're not going to change the amount of material that we're going to need. We're not going to change the amount of hours to double the time to say it's going to take an hour. All we're going to do, Ash is like, sack him, sack him. What we're going to do, we're just literally going to go back to what it was before. Simple as that. So because we're going to go back to what it was before, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that material, because it was based on fact, that 0.5 hours and then the 0.5 hours for variable overheads. We're just going to go back. We're not going to change that to 20 quid because that definitely needs sorting. Although saying that, I suppose you wouldn't change the selling price, because that was just a discount that is given to his existing customers. It's not going to be a discount. It's going to give a discount just to those customers that have been delayed. So actually that wouldn't come into it. But what you're thinking about is and none of this is not in the question. It's all in the question. You just need to be able to word it. So we are not going to update the standards with anything to do with the material or the time it's taken, but we are going to update the standards with the 2% because that's been set in stone. So how I've wrote that, keeping standards up to date. It is important to keep standards up to date as inventory is valued at the standard cost. This is then used to value inventory in the financial statements. Out of date inventory valuation could cause the inventory to be incorrectly valued on the statement of financial position, also known as the balance sheet. It can make us make incorrect pricing decisions. So if we're trying to come up with a price of how much it's going to cost to make something so that we can then decide how much to sell it for, if our standards are out of date, we might actually, I mean, you've done Maboo. Standards sometimes are not updated for years and years on end. You know, material might have cost 50p 3 years ago. Now it's 5 quid. If you are not going to update your standards and you're going to use 50p and you're going to use that figure to decide how much it's going to cost to make a unit that then you're going to sell, you're going to end up making a loss. Let's say you put material in at 50p and then you add your labour and you've worked out it's going to cost 3 quid to make a unit. But then you think, right, brilliant, 3 quid, right, well, sell it for 2 quid. Sell it for 5. I'm going to make a £2 profit. You then find that you've used the wrong standards. Yeah, you've used the standards that were 5 quid. The standards that were 3 quid. Really, the material alone was £5 because it was so out of date. You've just started selling all your products at a massive loss. It's a nightmare. Excuse me. What else could we do? What else is there? To decide whether to continue to make products or not, out of date standards could mean decisions are based on incorrect standards. So actually, because standards are out of date, you know, it's like we might have standards that say labour to make something, it takes an hour and a half. But actually, we've got a new machine now. It only takes half an hour. So you might decide not to make that product that's actually making you quite a lot of money based on the fact that you think it takes too long. Well, it doesn't, but you need to update your standards. Okay. The company will not keep the increased time, which is double, or the increased kilograms of material per unit, as this is not beneficial. They will revert back to the original supplier and the original standard cost. Only other thing I'd put, reflecting the increased wage rate of 2% is, however, an example of a change in the standards that needs to be updated. Please let me know if you require any further information. Kind regards, AAT, student. And that, as I always do, I've gone over the hour. The only other thing, I'm a bit scared to do it because I don't want to open a can of worms. Oh, it's 20 to 7. I don't know if I dare say this. If you stay on another 5 weeks and listen to me, I'm going to teach you variances and how to do them. Did Cass go through variances with you? So things like how do you record a material, or how do you record labour, how do you record material? So the, you know, adverse price, usage, and material. Did she do those? The AQP times AP, AQP times SP. How did she teach it, guys? For any of you that were on last week, how did she teach variances? You see, I do not do, Tony, I can't teach it that way. She did tell me she ended up doing should do, did do. I genuinely, and I know she doesn't do should do, did do. I've got what I call a Bible sheet. It's nothing to do with religion. It's just so important. I call it a Bible sheet. Oh, right. So I won't do it. Well, Tony, you'd have to put your fingers in your ears if I tell you what, right? Do it your way. If you're happy to do. Yeah, I'll send you a copy of it. It's a bit scruffy, I think. It's about 25 years old, but it works. Let me find one. So what am I sending tonight? What did I say I was going to send? I'm going to send the Bible sheet. What else did I say I'd send? The note. Yeah, I'm going to send the yeah. You wanted the answer from today, didn't you, Tamia? I'm a bit nervous about sending the answers out because some of you are going to be here for the next 5 weeks. Do you promise not to look at the answers? Tell you what, I'll just send the answer to today's task. That's the way to do it. So Bible sheet, answer from today's task. If any of you are doing the exam and you want a copy of the answers, email me separately and I'll send you a copy of the answers. I'm not going to send a copy of the answers to everybody because that would ruin it for you for the next 5 weeks. Right. I'm going to do something now. If you hate it, I'm not teaching it. This is revision. This is how I will be teaching this in the next 5 weeks. And if it looks scary and complicated, I promise when I actually teach it, it's not. So what I've put together is, what's that, 5,700? Let me just remind myself. Can't remember what this is. I did it really quickly yesterday when I was in the middle of doing something else. Not that I don't pay attention to you guys, of course I do. Right, let me just stop sharing for 1 second. Yeah, of course I will, Usha, yeah. I'm just looking at something, guys. Oh no, it won't let me do it. Right, hang on a second. Let me just open something. That's better. Sorry to keep you guys. I'm just looking for this because it's quite important. Right, let me just go on and share this with you. What they've done right at the very end, I'm whizzing past all answers so you don't see them. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. They have done, I hate how they've done it. They've done your labour variance. So this is, they've just gone through and they've done some workings for how they've worked out the labour. Okay. And what they've done, they've got, if you look back at the original question says that we had a labour variance of 142,500. I think it was. Let me just look. I've got pieces of paper all over now. Yeah, 148,200 is the overall variance. Okay, I will do. Just hang on. But I wouldn't have taught it like that. So put your fingers in your ear if you don't want to see this. Let me stop sharing. And I have not got time tonight to teach this, but I'll send you my Bible sheet. And if you think it works for you, that's good. Right, this is what I would have done. We use what we call a 4-line approach. Now, what I'm going to send you is the Bible sheet. Oh, sorry. Have I not shared the screen? What an idiot. I'm writing away and not sharing it. Can you see it now? Can you see something on the screen where I've wrote the word 4-line approach? Brill. Right. And the Bible sheet has got the full wording on it. But when I'm teaching this, or when we're teaching this in general, we want you to learn 4 lines of short little words. So we call it AHP times AR. So when I send you the Bible sheet, you'll see that stands for actual hours paid times the actual rate. So that's the actual rate per hour. Actual hours paid times the standard rate. So that was our standard. So the Bible sheet is just giving you, because when you've got to do the variances for Maboo, you've got material and labour that you need to calculate. Okay, so you might be happy to do labour did cost, labour should cost, but I don't teach it that way, and most tutors don't. We use a little cheat sheet where we just kind of plot numbers. So it goes actual hours paid times actual rate, actual hours paid times standard rate, actual hours worked times standard rate, and standard hours for your actual level of production times your standard rate. And if you have never been taught this, you probably think I'm speaking in some weird foreign language right now. Right, it tells us that we produced 19,000 units. So I had to do a little bit of a workings because I haven't actually got, when I look at the mock question, it doesn't tell me the actual amount of hours that were worked, but it does tell me that we produced 19,000 units, and it does tell me they actually took us double the time. So we know that our standard was half an hour. So I just thought about it up there in the question above. I'm pointing above, you can't see me obviously, but above it says in the question that it ended up taking double the time. So I know that it actually took me 1 hour. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. If it actually took double the time, then in my little workings here to work out my actual hours, it was 1 hour per unit, and we actually produced 19,000 units. So therefore we actually worked and we were actually paid for 19,000 hours. Okay, so what I know under here, we'd put 19,000 hours because that's what they were actually paid for. I put the same figure in there. Now this question's right. Some questions you're told that what you were paid and what you worked were different. That might be because you were paid for 40 hours, but you only worked 38 hours because 2 hours were idle time, because it'll tell you in the question that a machine broke down, but none of that happens in this question. Okay, so we have 19,000 hours in each one. We don't know the actual rate per unit, but what we do know is the actual amount of labour that was spent, because it tells us we actually spent £290,700 on labour. Is that all right, guys? So I know that we actually spent a total of £290,700. Right, what do I know then? What else can I fill in? Well, that's easy. To get my AR, my actual rate per hour, take the total cost of 290,700 and divide it by the 19,000 hours that we actually worked. And that will give me whatever it is. I think it works out to be £15.30. So we actually paid our staff £15.30. Thanks, Sarajita. Right, so £15.30. Right, looking at the information Can you tell me how much the standard rate was per hour? How much did we say we'd pay them per hour? Yeah, can everybody see that? £15 an hour we said we'd pay. So in my SR column, I'm always going to put 15 because that's what we said. That's what we expected. That was our standard rate from our budget. Okay, so line 2 and 3 is going to be the same because what we actually paid them was the hours that they worked. So the figures will be the same. So we would have got 285,000 and 285,000. The only tricky bit is the standard hours, because that's SHAP stands for the standard hours for 1 unit times the actual production. So SHAP. So standard hours per unit. How long did it say it would take in our original standards to make 1 unit? What was it per unit, Manpreet? Can everybody say 0.5 hours, Joanne? That's right. Okay. So I originally said it'd take half an hour. So my SH would be 0.5 hours. And we know that we actually you'd need this is the way that you get to work out the labour rate variance and the labour efficiency variance. I'll explain. I'll just give me 2 minutes. Right, so 0.5 hours times the actual hours that were worked. Well, we know, we've already worked it out, there was 19,000 units produced. So therefore, and it was pretty straightforward really, because it tells us in the question that we actually took double the time. So we could have just taken 19,000 hours and divided it by 2. But if we take half an hour times the 19,000 actual units, we would get 9,500 hours. So 9,500 hours at 15 quid comes to 142,500. That is the end. Yeah. So, and that's right, that's your standard cost. What we've now done, line 1 and 2 is our labour rate variance. So we said we'd spend £15 an hour. So Asha, the actual hours were 19,000 hours, because we know in the question it says it took double the time. So if our standard was half an hour, it took 1 hour. Okay. And we know that there were 19,000 units. So that's how we work out our actual hours. Is that all right? So that's this bit here. Okay. So my line 1 and 2, the difference between 290,700 and 285,000 gives me a labour rate variance of £5,700. Is that adverse or favourable? You tell me. So I'm actually comparing 15 quid, which is what I said I'd pay, to £15.30, which is what I actually paid. So is that variance adverse or favourable? It's adverse, absolutely. So of our overall variance, 5,700 of it was down to what we paid our staff. You could also argue that that's a bit of a planning variance. I would argue that that's a bit of a planning variance. Why? Oh, no, it's not. It's not. That is a controllable variance, because in our notes, in our original standards, we said we were going to pay them £15. Why did the production manager then pay them £15.30? It's a good question. You could bring that into the question. You don't even need to do all this. I'm just showing you where all these figures come from. But I definitely know that when I say I'm going to pay somebody 15, why did I then go pay them £15.30? Yeah, but it hasn't been taken into account, has it, Rebecca? It tells us in the question that they forgot. For whatever reason, we paid them £15.30. Ah, no, you're right. You're right. I'm being an idiot. Hang on. Hang on a minute. You're absolutely right. We didn't. I'm being an absolute total idiot. That's exactly what it is. 1530 minus 15 divided by 15 times. Yeah, I'm being an idiot. Ignore everything I just said. Well, 5 seconds of it. That £15.30 included the 2% increase. Thank God for you, Rebecca. It wasn't budgeted for. That's why it's not in there. So the labour rate was down to the fact that so actually it's not an operational variance. It is a planning variance because we forgot to include it. Sorry. Thank you, Rebecca. Right. Line 3 and line 4. This is our labour efficiency. I can hear my dog outside my door, like crying, wanting to come in. She's been pathetic. Right, I've got a difference of 285,000 minus 142,500. I have got a difference of 142,500. Right, efficiency is not really to do with money, it's to do with hours. Okay, so when we are looking at whether this is adverse or favourable, we go straight to here. That was the number of hours we expected to take. That's the number of hours we actually took. The simple fact that it took double the time must mean it's adverse, because it's nothing, and we know why. We know the whole scenario, why it happened, but that is adverse. So if you do a total labour variance, you take your labour rate, which was the 2%, and we said that we had 5,700 adverse, and we look at our labour efficiency, which was 142. Sorry, my pen has just decided to stop for a second. It's gone on strike. Come on, come on, come on. 142,500 adverse. Overall, we're back to 148,200 adverse. So we know, if we look back at our exam, the 142,800 there is made up of, some of it's to do with the price or the labour 2% increase that wasn't included. The rest of it is down to the fact that we took longer, down to the fact that it was rubbish material. Okay, again, we didn't really need to do all that, but I just wanted to show you how those variances all add back to, you know, to all of that. So I might have confused you a little bit more because this was a worded question. However, it would be quite cocky to shove that in the exam. You're probably not going to have time to go and do all the workings in this. If this question came up, task 8, in this exact question, I wouldn't have shown all that because I don't think it was necessary. But I think it's good for you guys to see where all the numbers come from. Right. I've finally done task 8. Has anybody got any questions? I hope so. I really would have much rather you seen me doing a big, massive number question because I could have put a little bit more to it. Let me just put in my, let me stop sharing. Yeah, I would have probably been able to put a little bit more on it. I'm actually teaching all week, Jade. So I'm going to send you an email and you'll have my email address. I'll try my best if you've got any questions to reply, but I'm teaching all week. So it might be that I don't get around to it before, you know, before you actually sit your exam, but I'll try my best. Is that okay? Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm going to, yeah. When I send the email tonight or tomorrow morning, first thing, just reply to that. I thought you were saying, can I ask you some questions? Yeah, you can. If you've got any other questions you want to ask, anything you're not sure about, if I get a chance, I'll reply to you. But guys, good luck if you've got your exam this week. I'll send everything over to you as soon as I can. But hopefully tonight was helpful, and I'll see some of you next week. Nice and ready to go through some number stuff. Is that all right? Good. I'm really glad, Jade. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad it was helpful. That's the most important thing. But feel free, guys, to leave whenever you're ready. Good luck with your exam if it's coming up.